Welcome back to Nourished Inside Out, the space where growth gets real and self love leads the way. I'm your host, Annetta Walklaw, and before we dive into today's episode, I want to remind you of something powerful. You are worthy, you are enough, and you don't need to wait for permission to love yourself fully. That's exactly why I wrote my book, Blooming with Self Love, to give you the tools, affirmations, and daily mindset shifts to help you stand in your power and own your story. This book isn't just words on a page, it's a movement. So if you're ready to stop shrinking and start showing up for yourself, grab your copy today with the link in the show notes below, and let's walk this self love journey together. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. Today I'm here with Chris Manderino, and he is the founder of LyfeFuel Nutrition. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris.
Thanks, Annette. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I'd love to know a little bit more about yourself and how you've created Life Nutrition. Is it something that you saw yourself creating when you were younger, or did this come about later in life?
It came about later in life. I definitely had, I think, entrepreneurial ambitions since, the time I was a young child. My number one dream and goal as a young boy was to first make it to the NFL, and then secondly to start my own business. And I chased that dream of making it in an NFL. Was a difficult road to get there, but ultimately achieved that goal. And then it was after I transitioned away from the game into the business world that I cut my teeth in the world of nutrition, really starting kind of as a low man on the totem pole, working inside sales for another nutraceutical company, more focused in the weight loss bariatric surgery space. Doing that for about 5 years, and then eventually wanting to go my own route and take all those learnings and personal experience and apply it to what we've built at LifeFuel.
That's really interesting. I love that you have a athletic background, how you were saying that you really wanted to go to you were training for the NFL. Was nutrition a big part of your life prior to training to the NFL, or is that something that you started to take more serious as you were training?
Yeah, it was always something that I was very conscious about. I think at an early age, I understood that the way you fuel your body has a direct impact on performance, how you look, how you feel. And I was very, very mindful about it. Obviously, I didn't have nearly the depth of education and understanding around nutrition that I have now. So it's definitely evolved a lot more so after my time as an athlete. But it's always something that I've been uh, very aware of. And I would say that was enhanced or enlightened during my time living abroad. I've had the opportunity to live over in Italy on 3 different occasions, most recently in Sardinia, which is one of the world's blue zones. So I guess that contrast to kind of standard American diet, standard American way of living really opened my eyes to the importance of nutrition and really um, how important it is to make mindful choices around not just food and nutrition, but overall consumption habits.
It's a really great point that you just brought up about you living abroad in Italy and also living in America, because I think the food standards are very different, especially when it comes to supplements or even just grocery produce. I actually lived abroad myself in Mexico the last year, and just the quality of the food is so different. When you were building your brand Life Fuel, what were some challenges that you came across? Like, were there things that you wanted to bring to Italy from Italy to the US or vice versa? And what are some challenges that you faced?
Yes, there's a lot of challenges. We started the business over 10 years ago, so it wasn't, I guess, as easily accessible for anybody to just launch a nutrition brand at that time. It was still you had fewer players in the market. You had, a contract manufacturing sector that wasn't as well developed as it is now. So fewer number of partners to help get a young, scrappy brand going and off the ground. So it was a lot of no's in the early days. I was kind of going door to door or manufacturer to manufacturer trying to get somebody to work with us on this concept that we had created. And it was, they either wanted like really high minimum order quantities, or there was a lot of restrictions around what type of ingredients we're able to use. Oftentimes they were just asking us to trust them in terms of like the sourcing, because they have a set number of suppliers or ingredients that they are already carrying in house. But we wanted more discretion over who those suppliers were, what those raw materials ultimately were, and really get into more granular detail about the sourcing and what goes into it and doesn't go into those products. And so that took a lot of time, but being persistent and just keeping at it ultimately paid off, and we're able to align with a manufacturer that was able to help that bring that initial vision to life. As we've progressed now over the years, I've really been enlightened to a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, I guess, in the supplement manufacturing world. To your point, yes, there's a lot of differences in the way that supplements are regulated or not regulated, for that matter, in the United States versus other countries. A lot of countries, it falls under their equivalent of the FDA. So like in Brazil, it's the Anvisa guidelines. In Canada, you have Health Canada, and in Europe, it varies by country, but usually held to a much more rigorous standard in terms of what they allow to come to market. Um, so, I think with that, we've had to really, double down on our core values and where we think, um, the gap in the market is, which is really comes down to, everybody says quality, but really going deeper into that and leading with a food first philosophy. And that was one of the big takeaways from Italy. You didn't see, you're getting so much nutrition from food, which has largely been stripped out of most of the food in the United States. If you look back over the past few decades, a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we consume, and other fruits for that matter, have lost 50% or more of their nutritional value. And so the I guess need for supplementation is really important here in the U.S. However, the standard process for going about that is a synthetic process that is more chemically derived than it is actually natural. Most consumers don't ask the question or even have the understanding, and neither did I, at the beginning of this journey, how a supplement is made. Right? We take this standard of all natural and kind of leave it at that and don't ask too many questions. But once you start kind of going down that rabbit hole, you'll start to realize that most synthetic supplements are derived from petroleum or coal tar or other various chemicals that are designed to mimic natural vitamins, but you lose a lot of the cofactors, enzymes, and other things. Not to mention, the substrate itself that is used to do that is, one, less bioavailable, two, potentially harmful compared to what you would get from real fruits and vegetables. So that's where we've really leaned into that, and where we've got some exciting things in the product development pipeline to be, completely organic, food grown across the board in terms of, every vitamin, mineral, and ingredient we use is something that you can easily recognize, pronounce, and even grow in your own backyard.
That's absolutely incredible. I love that you were able to break that down because I think a lot of times us as humans or consumers, we see the word natural flavors or natural ingredients, but what does that actually mean? Because that can come from so many different places, so many different sources, and we don't even know if it's a good quality or not. So I really love that you guys take that initiative because when I actually moved back to the United States after living in Mexico for a year, like I actually had a hard time readjusting to the food because it's so different from here compared to other countries in the world. So, what are some core values that you guys live by that are non-negotiables for Life Fuel?
Yeah, the three pillars that we stand by are quality, efficacy, and sustainability. And by aligning kind of our methodology and how we go about, not just product sourcing, but everything we do as a company with those core values, I think it brings everything into line because it makes our decision making really easy. Like nothing comes into the businesses unless it can adhere to those core principles. So when we're looking at material sourcing, we're not just stopping at, quality and saying, okay, yeah, he says it's high quality, it's been tested, great, we'll stop there. The like whether it's been clinically tested, if we have studies to substantiate the health claims, what we can do on that front is a key area of us. So a lot of, I guess, brands out there will say, oh, this one thing has these 1,000 health benefits, and it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's probably oftentimes there's not enough of any single item to actually equate to the health benefits that they're trying to promote. So coming from kind of a more medical based nutraceutical focused background, the efficacy was a really, really important thing because, unique patient populations were like the bariatric community had very specific needs that they had to get through supplementation because they absolutely could not get it through a whole food. We saw that as an opportunity to now apply that same standard to the general consumer audience because the expectation really should be the same. Um, and you should know that, when you're purchasing a product, first, why you're buying that in the first place. Is there a specific need that you're trying to solve for? One, and two, does it have the evidence to back up, what it says it's going to do? Obviously, you can do your own anecdotal testing and track your biomarkers, which I always encourage as a way to start. But yeah, those are really key things that often get overlooked by a lot of companies out there. And then lastly, the sustainability piece is really woven into kind of our core values and mission across the board. We want to do good for uh, both people and planet, right? So we're very mindful about the what goes into the product sourcing, how those foods are grown, how they kind of flow through the supply chain. And we want to bring more transparency and awareness to that. So that's a core mission of ours going forward, is to be able to enable the consumer to kind of see down to from seed to sale effectively how all these different fruits and vegetables and superfoods ultimately are created, and then make it into the products that we create at LyfeFuel.
So beautiful. I kind of want to go back to the beginning. Mentioned that you started this company roughly 10 years ago. What was it like for you as being a young entrepreneur when you were getting this business up and running? Like, 'cause obviously it started as an idea, and most people don't believe in your idea until they see it in the physical. So did you have support around you that of people who supported you on your vision, or is it something that you needed to execute and show for yourselves?
I think it's a combination of both. I've been fortunate to, have a great support system around me, but I think, I was going through kind of a personal transformation myself, really change of identity, being Chris, the football player, to Chris, whatever comes next, right? And so that transition was really challenging, but I think in the end, very beneficial. Trying to lean on and, a lot of the skills that it took to excel as an athlete and apply them to, this next chapter as, entrepreneur. I was able to get some firsthand experience before, jumping down the entrepreneurial path, which I think helped tremendously. Just getting immersed in a similar business model, better understanding kind of a lot of the science that we wanted to apply in R&D that we wanted to apply to LyfeFuel. But then there was the moment that, I never forget. It's like the oh shit, I'm really going to do this or I'm not, right? And so I was kind of torn between, do I continue to kind of climb the corporate ladder and take what's safe and secure, or do I chase this thing, which I have this, compelling urge to do, without knowing what's on the other side? I could completely fall flat on my face, and this could be a total failure. But then you don't know until you take the plunge and get into it. And um, I'm very grateful and thankful that I chose, to go that route. But it certainly wasn't easy and very scary from the start, or at least it seemed to be. Um, and when I was building the business, so I was giving up basically a secure thing, secure income. You going, okay, how am I going to survive until this thing is producing enough revenue for me to pay myself something? So, you kind of did, for me, I had a former teammate that he had a CrossFit gym over in Italy. He invited me to go back over and kind of manage and coach there. And that freed me up to be able to pursue this business in my free time and start to build the infrastructure and work on the products while I was over there, still make some money, and then just kind of go down that path. And so it kind of forced me to be industrious on that side. I even had moved back to Newport, and I invested. It wasn't a lot of money, but like a small electric boat with a few friends, and I put up a website, and I was taking people out to do tours of the harbor just to make some extra cash while LyfeFuel was still trying to get up and going. So um, it's been an awesome journey. It's definitely been challenging in many ways. Hasn't been easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's been the most rewarding thing that I've done.
I love that though. It's just, it really goes back to like, if you have a dream in your heart and it's yours for a reason, it's not for anybody else. And if you have that dream, you're going to do whatever it takes to figure it out and things will fall into place. But like, you never know if you never know. All you know is all you know. It's like trying to tell a kid, don't touch the oven because it's hot, but they'll never know if they don't touch it. So sometimes you just gotta let that sting for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
So I really love that. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to start that entrepreneurial journey, but they're afraid to? They're 50 in, 50 out, but they know deep down inside that they have a dream that they want to execute.
Yeah, I think it's first off foremost, really do the work up front, right? So do the deep dive, challenging things, worst case scenario, paint that picture. Like I think if you can kind of put yourself in that scenario and say, okay, worst case scenario, I dive into this thing, it doesn't work out. What then? Right? Oftentimes you can likely go back to doing whatever you're doing before. Um, and that worst case scenario probably isn't as dire as bad as maybe we um create it to be in our minds. So that's, I think, an important part of it. Plus, that what you'll learn along the way is going to be so much more valuable that you'll be able to carry with you and apply to whatever you do next. But I think one of the things that I did, and again, I was able to, I was like itching, ready to go. I was like anxious, not anxious, but like ready to get started. But there was so much work to be done before launching the business that if I would have just like dove into it, and if it didn't take us a year plus to create that product, it probably would have been a lot more challenging, because then you're trying to struggle with, a sales model without having a foundational like business model in place. So I remember working long nights, early mornings, just like going in and tinkering with the business model and trying to kind of think through um, how to make it all work, and just kind of continuing to push along that. And then eventually the product was ready and it was go time. And I was like, okay, now it's time to put the plan into action. And I would say be prepared, because nothing ever goes 100% according to plan. So you have to be very resilient. You have to be, equipped to be able to pivot. And just, I think the grit and determination is what will separate a lot of people from kind of getting through a lot of those challenging times in the beginning to, having something that's thriving and flourishing um, at a later stage. Because a lot of people, I think, give up, when it gets too difficult or too hard, as opposed to being very resourceful and looking at, what they might be able to do differently to continue to try to make it work. If, that dream and vision is compelling enough and there's really something there, then I think it's something worth fighting for. And that's something that in a different chapter, my wife and I did. I was still not like making much money at all. It was probably like a few $1,000s a month from the business is what I was taking. And we were fortunate enough to have moved out of our place here in Newport, and we ended up traveling the world for a year, which basically it drastically reduced our cost of living. We traveled throughout Southeast Asia, we're over in Europe, and fortunately for like Airbnbs and cheap flights, we just kind of let that guide our course of living for. We actually ended up doing it for 3 years, but there's no way that we could have, like, if we would have like stayed stuck in Newport. It's one of the highest costs of living in the country. There's no way that we would have been able to make that work. So we were open to, none of it was planned. We just kind of surrendered to the experience, and it was the most beautiful journey and experience that we shared, and allowed us to essentially get the business to a point that was then, providing us more of an income and livelihood.
I love that experience that you shared with your wife on how you guys took those 3 years, right? 3 years
Yeah, yeah.
to
Then
travel.
I mean, she was going through the residency process here. She was waiting for a green card. We planned a wedding down in Brazil, sight unseen, and basically we had everything set to go. And then she got the letter in the mail from USCIS or whatever, that the interview was scheduled, and you can't reschedule, or interview was scheduled for the date before we're scheduled to fly out, or after we're scheduled to fly out. So we had to change all of our travel plans last minute. We actually did the interview and drove to LA and then flew to Brazil, like all in the same day. They wouldn't let me get on a flight connecting from Miami to Brazil because I didn't have a ticket leaving Brazil. I had sent her just like, kind of like a fantasy trip, like around, I created a around the world itinerary via one of the airlines. And it was like, oh, that'd be great to do one day. The flight tickets each were like 10 grand plus. And so we just kind of laughed it off. But then when we got in Miami, it kind of forced our hand to do it. So it's like travel. I pulled up Google Flights in the airport. It's like fly from Brazil to anywhere in the world 2 months from now. And there's a flight going from Brazil to Portugal, and it was only a couple $100. So we're like, I looked at her. I said, you want to do this? She said, yeah, why not? We don't have to go back anytime soon, because she had the green card, and we didn't have apartment or mortgage or anything back home. And so we did, and then we just kept doing that. So, we went throughout Portugal, and then it's like, okay, where are we going to go next? Fly anywhere from Portugal to wherever. And so we went from like Portugal to Bordeaux, France. We went to Italy, went to the hometown of my great grandfather, her great grandfather, went through the Eureka Islands. Our goal was to get to Bali for our honeymoon. So we eventually went to Bali. We were there for 2 months. And then we're just having such an amazing time that we decided to stick around Southeast Asia for a while longer. So we went up through Thailand, Vietnam. That's when COVID hit in China. So we're like, let's get out of Asia, circled back to Thailand, went to Australia, and then finally into New Zealand. And we had a flight coming back from New Zealand to LA, because she technically was not supposed to be gone for more than a year. But then as soon as we got in New Zealand, basically the entire country shut down, no flights going in or out. And so we got stuck in New Zealand for an entire year, which is an
Wow.
incredible experience, but certainly challenging. But if we didn't have, I guess just the ability to adapt and not try to force anything, and if we hadn't structured the business the way that we did, it would have been very, very stressful and very, very difficult. But we were able to make it all work for us. We actually formulated a new product during our time in New Zealand. We were working on our essential nutrition bars, and the samples we kept receiving would be pretty melted by the time we received them in New Zealand due to the chocolate chips.
Wow.
And we almost started a chocolate chip business because we couldn't find like a clean chocolate chip that didn't have 10 ingredients, which is driving us crazy. Like, why does a chocolate chip need to have so many things in it? It's just chocolate, and sugar or something, right? And we came across these sweetened cacao nibs at a local farmer's market. And so I suggested we try that. And it basically solved the whole issue. One, we were able to find a cleaner option instead of a chocolate chip. And two, the cacao nibs don't melt at all. So it was, yeah. And that's been a fun part of our travels as well. We really try to be intentional about kind of immersing into the local culture. We seek out, like, went to the cacao farms in Bali and various things like that, and see how much work goes into a lot of these ingredients that oftentimes we just take for granted. Because it's like you click a button, something's on your doorstep 2 seconds later, but it's really labor intensive and really gives us appreciation for that. And I think another reason why it's so important for us to kind of seek out those and be hands-on with our supply chain, knowing that we're not just getting high quality products, but the people that are kind of working the farms and the communities are getting a fair living wage, and it's really, empowering them and not just kind of being a race to the bottom.
It's so awesome. Something that you said that really stood out to me was adapt and don't force. Because I think a lot of times, like when we're doing these ventures, whether it's business or whether it's traveling, we can't control outside circumstances. We can only control our actions and our attitudes. And I love that journey that you guys went on because it really opens your eyes to a whole nother world or multiple worlds in your guys' case, because you're going to so many different cultures and really expressing and seeing life from a different lens. So I love all of that. Do you guys feel like that you had some kind of work-life balance for the first 5 years of getting your business up and running? Because a lot of people say they don't want to leave their comfortable job because they don't want to sacrifice their work-life balance. Do you believe there could be work-life balance as an entrepreneur in the beginning stages?
I think it's really important to define what that means. What is important for you as an individual, right? If work-life balance means, I want to be able to, spend, I don't know, 3, 4 nights out in the week, socializing or at a bar, and like also building my business or whatever that is, probably going to be very tough to do that. I think you're going to have to make some sacrifices, a lot of sacrifices to chase that dream, because you're trying to build something from scratch, right? And if it were easy, everybody would do it. It's not easy. Anybody that tells you that the entrepreneurship path is going to be an easy one is never lived it. It's super challenging. There's a lot of things that are going to pop up that you can't expect or plan for. Um, that said, I think balance is absolutely attainable. It's just a matter, like, one, you're going to have to be very, very protective about your time and where you allocate that. So for me, I've now for a very long time, I'm very protective of my morning. That time is for me. So I've got like my morning routine that I go through. I've been very disciplined about starting my day with mindful meditation. There was a period where I was doing more journaling. I make sure I work out in the morning, and then after that, I'm ready to sink my teeth in to anything business, and then freed up for family and stuff later in the day. So I think you have to find what works for you. It's important to make sure that there is that you time. Otherwise, it'll be easy to burn yourself out, because you're just trying to do so many things simultaneously. So the more you're actually able to say no to, I think the more equipped and better off you'll be at making progress toward what you want to achieve, in business and in life overall. So yeah, that would be it's definitely achievable, but again, I think it goes back to the discipline and not saying yes to too many things, overcommitting, and really being mindful and purposeful about what you value, the quality of time, and not just being everywhere at once.
Was it hard for you to say no in the beginning?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
super tough. Yeah, um, very very challenging. But I think there was inflection points where I kind of would remind myself of the sacrifices that it took for me to excel as an athlete. And a lot of times, things that, other students were doing in college that I couldn't do, because I had to prepare for a game, or in the NFL, right? Not being able to take, vacation time to put in extra hours at the gym and all that stuff. I tried to apply that to the entrepreneurial path as well, because I knew those sacrifices would ultimately pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. You were already setting those boundaries with yourself and the people around you, especially because sports, because you needed discipline, you needed boundaries. I think one of the hardest ones is just coming out of that people pleaser. Because even though you're an athlete and you're staying disciplined and you have boundaries on certain things that you're doing, you still have those people pleaser aspects, whether it's trying to be the best to prove to your coach that you can do it or trying to prove to your friends and family that you can be the best athlete. Is that something that you struggled with at all?
I think if you're doing it to please other people, you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
It should not, it shouldn't be about external factors that's driving and motivating you, because that's going to wane, and it's not gonna fulfill you, at the end of it all, right? You have to do it for your own personal reasons. That needs to be the driving factor and force behind pursuing it, because that's all you'll have to really fall back on at the end of the day.
I love that. So what has been one of the most reward, because I'm sure there's many, but what has been one of the most rewarding things on this journey of entrepreneurship, whether it's yourself or what you've been building with your wife? What's one of the most rewarding things?
Well, I think personally, it's really been the freedom of time and location. That's been a massive one. And that doesn't exist for every entrepreneur necessarily. I think really, how the business is structured, what the business is. There's just a lot of businesses that don't that still require you to be, physically present at a specific location. But the way that we modeled our business, I wanted the freedom of time and location to be able to kind of pursue the things that I really love, which is, traveling and being active and all that, and being able to just pick up and go, and living life by design, not by default. So, that has been extremely rewarding. Um, the other thing, just in what we do, I mean, empowering other people to transform, go through their own transformation, feel energized and empowered, and see kind of the result of making healthy changes in their life has been amazing. Like I've honestly cried at times reading some of our customers' responses and emails to certain things, and it's just it's a great reminder of why we do what we do, and that there's real people behind this that really have come to depend on it, and it's really been uplifting and empowering for them, their families, and kind of their own, endeavors and pursuits. And so that's testament to and why we do what we do, and just a good reminder. We don't need it all the time, but like when we see that, it makes me smile, and just, super grateful that it's being valued and recognized by, those who've, found us.
So beautiful. Last question for you, Chris. What does it mean for you to be nourished inside out?
What does it mean for me to be nourished inside and out? Well, I think it's the way that I think about this is very holistic, right? And it's something that there's not just one aspect. We're all constantly trying to grow and improve in so many different facets of life. But it's really important to get the foundation right. Without the foundation or the proper soil, it's going to be very difficult to, produce fruit and flowers and, blossom and thrive, right? So for me, I find that nourishment in my daily routine that really helps keep me sane, stable, and allow me to kind of fill my own cup so that I can better serve those around me. Without that, I often feel depleted, stressed, and life is more chaotic. So I think, at least for me, just getting that foundation right, settling into a routine that works where, from outsiders looking in, it might seem boring, but it's been really effective, really rewarding, and it's allowed me to be very selective about, what I commit to, what I say yes to, and ensure that those are moments that are going to be very meaningful, purposeful, and just align with the life I want to live.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. So, can you please tell us where can people find Life Fuel?
Yeah, best way is just through our website. It's life with a Y, LyfeFuel.com. We've also got the same handle on most of the social media platforms, but the best place is, direct to our website.
All right, I'll have everything linked down in the show notes below so people can
Right.
stay in touch. Thank you for joining us today, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me. This is a real pleasure.